Today we're going to talk about the Enchantress, is what I called her. Could also be called the storyteller. Yet, what do the stories do? They enchant us. So she's called the Enchantress. And she has a flock of fish-like creatures nearby, enjoying her story of the golden fish. We have yet to see what's going to happen. But if you follow, we will find out on the next artwork to come. And so, the Enchantress, we are not sure, looking at this picture, whether she knows we're there, whether she notices our presence. It's the same kind of thing as before, a sense of a little bit of eeriness, a little bit of uncertainty, a little bit of I don't know if I can trust this presence, this character. How close would I like to get in the deep, dark sea with these glowing entities? And so, first I started with a sketch. And this sketch I had done years and years ago. I don't even know when, but I had it in my treasure chest. And I pulled it out, and as I was looking through a bunch of my sketches, this one stood out, and I thought, I like that. And it was just the top of the figure with a hand and the skull eyes, and as you can see, I'm showing it. It's right there. So that started, and then I thought, okay, well, I'm going to do a thumbnail. And I had this idea of all these little fish watching this character, and this character having like keys, or it turned into the glowing fish, which I liked. I had a few different ideas, and a lot of this, well, I was looking at this Alphonse Mucha picture, and I thought, I like that. I like the creatures, I like the creepiness, and I'm going to go for something like that. And so I started out actually doing kind of a sepia sort of color comp in sepia colors, toned. And then I went through a few iterations, and I chose one sort of value scheme that I liked, a certain brightness of the fish and things like that. And then, this was actually when I combined both my thumbnail and my sketch, which was a little tricky because they were not exactly the same, which was just my experimental phase of doing one a little different and doing the other that way. So I wanted the full body and the drapery and everything that I was thinking about, and then I also desired the messiness and the sort of original essence that my first sketch had. So combined the two, got what I got there, and then I started working the values on top on Photoshop. Did a few different iterations, was trying out the different darkness to lightness variations, and landed on one. Then I did a color scheme, color comp over top, so I added colors over top. Then I started to collect reference, and so I always had that Alphonse Mucha one already. It was on my magnet board, it was on my wall, and I was constantly looking at it, thinking about this piece. When I started to collect some other reference as well, so I had a few reference packs. One is from, I'll put the links if I can for those available here. And so those are in the description of the video. And those references, I used various images from, one was a kind of a hand pack, and then the other one had some photos of a woman with red hair and a kind of turquoise drapery and stuff that I took some patterns from, and I borrowed the style, though she was not wearing at all the draped thing or sitting in that pose. And in the image, in the final image, or even the rough sketch, when I got it, I'm jumping ahead here. First of all, I gathered this reference. And then I started sketching it out on paper. And first I did some Alphonse Mucha sketches. So I drew the main characters in that one image. And then I drew a bunch of the fish creatures. And after that I decided to start drawing my own creatures, embodying the Alphonse Mucha type of style. And I also started to do my own character. And I had this reference of this woman who had a creepy look, and it turned out creepier because of the posing I did her in and the certain like the drapery, as well as the hand positions. And one hand, well, both hands are just like slightly larger, and her neck is a little long and weird, and the whole thing, you know, all these nuances that add to that creepy feel. So I was going for this creepy vibe, so all those little decisions are for that. And the fish creatures also were that, and I stayed with the comp. So as I started to work up the image, once I had all these little sketches, I'm jumping around all over the place. Once I had all these little sketches, I ended up placing them together on Photoshop, organizing them in a way that worked, because I had them all in individual pieces and I knew it would work. I was designing it to fit together. But instead of doing one finished traditional drawing that was rendered to a high level, I did these individual pieces and then I placed them together, which was different, but it did work in the end. And I just felt like it was how my process wanted to go this time, so I just let it happen. And it kind of started from the thumbnail, because from the very beginning I had two images that I had to work together to make it happen. So in the end, or as I started the end process of the actual finishing the actual piece, I realized I reached a new level of detail, obviously, and the whole picture looked more real because the face was no longer kind of an empty skull face similar to the mermaid that I had done before, and I was using reference that gave me good detail that I could add into the piece, and the whole thing started to take on this greater realistic feel, which, as I was drawing it, I was exploring and I was noticing different things about the different various stages of the drawing. And ultimately, I enjoy the realism more on one way. And yet there's something about the original sketch that I described it to a friend when I showed them both, that one, it felt like the first original drawing and the way it was composed, and it was a little more cartoony, a little more Tim Burton style or something. I felt like I was inside the story, where when I got it to the place where it looked more realistic, the head looked like a real head, and various things anatomically, everything was more real. I started to feel like I'm a witness to a story being told rather than being in the story itself, which is interesting because it mirrors the process, where at the beginning I was telling the story, I was being involved in the making of it, and then when I started to bring it to that place of finish, I was now out of the process. I was finished with it. And this might have been actually after I had fully finished the piece, where I said those words. I said, one feels like I'm in the story, one feels like I'm witnessing the story. And I like both for different reasons. So it's a matter of where, where do I want my style to ultimately be. I do appreciate having realism in the sense of like the details, and I think of Norman Rockwell, where his characters are there's cartoon in them, but they're obviously very realistic looking, and you can tell who's who in a very specific way. Whereas cartoons leave more for the interpretation, because details are less, and therefore we can see more of ourselves in them, which is a concept discussed in Understanding Comics by Scott McCloud, which is a book about writing and understanding comics. Pretty simple title. So there's an interesting dynamics of the creative process that I enjoy both. Yet ultimately, this one came to the stage it was, ready to be colored to a final finish. So ultimately, as I came to the point where I can now bring this thing to a finish, I continued the painting process. I did it all on Photoshop and used a brush by Kyle's Brushes called the Gouache Go-Go Gouache, Gouache Go-Go, something like that. And I like it. I've used it before, and I also used a few brushes by Justin Gerard, who encouraged me to go into fantasy art more seriously, or at least, bring me to the point where I was finishing fantasy art, and so we can thank him for his encouragement for that, as well as his brushes, which I used a little bit. So I just kept refining the process, but something also that Justin said in one of his Twitch streams was how at some point when you get about, I think the number was like 20 hours, it's like he was working on an image and said when he reached his 20 hours, then I think it was something like this, then he was at a point where now he could go, okay, I know what it looks like it's all there, it's all set up. Now it's just going another 20 hours on it. And I haven't often made images that take that long. Yet I had that in mind with this one, and I thought, okay, when I think it's done, spend another 20 hours. And that pushed me in a good way, and I spent a lot of time on it. I didn't actually count the hours for this one. But I kept that in mind, and I do think it showed in this one. There's more added. It's a bigger picture, there's more storytelling. And that was something actually when I did the jellyfish image, the mermaid, Melissa. And then I was contemplating a new image to do with this one, with more of a story like the Alphonse Mucha image. It had more to it. I was also referencing this Repin image, which had a whole story involved. And I thought, well, I actually did a writing assignment. I did an exercise for myself where I wrote about my jellyfish picture, and then for 10 minutes, and then I wrote just stream of consciousness about the Repin picture. And I did it with some friends, and it was interesting what came out. And for me, the Repin picture had this whole story that evolved, that came to me as I was writing. And the mermaid one had some, but it wasn't as much. And I had this desire to make images that have more of a story, that are more full in terms of the dynamics of what's at play. And so I went for that in this image. And I feel like it's not quite Repin, but it's a start, and it's an experiment, and I'm moving into greater detail, greater storytelling, greater mastery of my craft. And that idea of when you think it's done, it's only 20 hours of 40 hours in, so just keep going. That's inspiring in an odd way, and it helped me to work. And really, when you get to work, that's when inspiration is at its most malleable, you might say, because that's the point when action is, how do I say this? There's a lot of things that are going through my mind. Hopefully you enjoy my authenticity in terms of just expressing whatever comes and goes. Yeah, so it was good stuff. I like where it ended up. There's always things that one could continue to work on. As I came to a place where I thought, yeah, it's good. Could I do another 20 hours on it? Yeah, probably. And it would be that much more refined. Yet, I'm glad I took it where I did and stopped, and I think it came to a point where it's like, okay, it's going to be more valuable for me to bring another image to this point rather than bringing this image to another point, right? So that's kind of where I'm at with this. Is there's always more time we could spend on things, but we only have so much time, and I have a lot of ideas. So as much as I love to see these things refined, and I'm going to bring them to the point where this Enchantress one is, or further or less far, just wherever it feels this is enough, this is the right amount, and that's an artistic choice. That's a choice that is based on a lot of things, but one of them is just intuition, and another part of it is the assessment of what I've learned from it, what the art of the learning is, not only what the lesson is of finishing the piece, but what the lesson of the lesson is. So that's where we are at today with the Enchantress, and I hope you enjoyed these videos, all the videos. Please watch, enjoy, and this is my rambles of my art process behind the scenes at When Anthony Draws. And please subscribe, please sign up for my newsletter in the description below, and we will see you on the next time around. Take care.